There are two types of people learning AI right now. There are the ones who are terrified it's coming for their job, and there are the ones who are using it to leave their job. After a year of being completely obsessed with this stuff, I am firmly in that second camp. After spending way more hours with Claude than is probably healthy, I've realized something. The people who are actually getting good at this, the ones who are shipping things and saving themselves time and building businesses, they're all doing a pretty specific set of moves. And most people, even people using Claude every day, are skipping most of them. So today, I want to walk you through the ones that I absolutely love, the ones I'm obsessed with, the ones that I think are really going to supercharge your experience, especially if you're not a developer. I'm just someone who spent a lot of time with this thing and worked it out by tinkering away, and I'll continue to tinker. None of what I'm about to show you needs any coding. You don't need a tech background. You just need to know what to do with the AI you're already paying for. And that's exactly what I'm going to give you. My name's Amy. I'm a 42-year-old living in Sydney, Australia with my dogs and my kids and my partner. And yes, I realize my AI voice doesn't sound Australian at all right now, or like me at all, because I'm having a hard time getting a synthesized version of it with the right cadence attached. But we'll keep working on it. And who knows? Maybe I'll just give up the idea of an AI avatar for now, and you'll see a real version of me in a little circle avatar on the slide edge. We'll see how things go. I believe we're on the edge of a renaissance, with artificial intelligence leading the charge. So I'm pouring my energy into understanding this thing, for a lot of different reasons. But the biggest project I currently have is trying to escape the daily grind and leave my 9-to-5 for good. I've been trying to do that for years now. And with AI, it actually finally looks like it might be possible. So I'm going to try to give you as much value as I can in these videos, while also trying to maintain the human element as we figure this stuff out. Because we are very much in the discovery phase, which means a lot of manual backwork, a lot of learning to understand what we're dealing with, and learning how to communicate with it. We're doing this together, basically. Right now, you're hearing a synthesized version of my voice for production ease. Maybe later I'll have a little avatar of myself in the bottom corner, talking to the slide. Okay, here's what we're covering today. Move number 1, the prompt template. And I want to start here because a lot of people confuse themselves about what prompt engineering even is. They think you need to buy a $500 course on it, or memorize some massive list of magic phrases, or learn some complicated framework that some guy on Twitter is selling. And it really, really doesn't have to be that. The truth about prompt engineering is that it's just the difference between you giving a vague instruction and getting back a vague response versus giving a structured instruction and getting back something useful. That's it. Most people are typing things into Claude like, make this better, and then wondering why the answer is generic. And the answer is generic because what you put in was generic. So here's the template. I first picked this up watching Sabrina Romanoff, and if you've spent any time in her videos, you'll recognize it straight away, because she teaches it a lot. What I love about it is that if you go and ask Claude itself how to write a better prompt, it'll suggest something almost identical. So the fact that Claude suggests it as well tells me that we're onto something pretty accurate with how Claude operates. Line 1. You are a top 0.1% expert in something, whatever the field is. Copywriting, tax structuring, baby sleep, content strategy. Whatever you're actually asking about. You just put it at the end of that line. Line 2. The task. What do you actually want it to do? And it can be really simple. I want you to research this and put it in a table. That's a task. You don't need to be clever about this. Line 3. The context. This is the bit most people skip, and it's the bit that matters the most. Anything you know that's relevant. What you've already tried, what worked, what didn't, what your budget is, what your constraints are, what your timeline is. As much specific detail as you're willing to share, that's what goes here. Line 4. Constraints. Things you don't want, or things that have to be true. I don't want to show my face. I'm working with a 4-hour-a-week budget. The answer needs to work for someone who hasn't done this before. Whatever your constraints actually are. And then line 5, which is my favorite. Ask me clarifying questions one at a time until you're 95% confident you can complete this task successfully. And the reason I love this line is because it makes Claude do the work of figuring out what you actually want, instead of just guessing and giving you a generic answer. It'll come back and ask things like, okay, so what's the audience here? And what tone are you after? And how long should this be? And as you answer those questions, you'll realize you didn't actually know what you wanted either. And the answer at the end is way sharper because of it. So that's it. Top 0.1% expert. The task, the context, the constraints. Ask me clarifying questions one at a time. Memorize that. Use it for a week, and you'll already be using Claude better than most people out there. Move 2. By default, AI wants to make you feel good. If you put an idea into Claude and you say, "What do you think?" it's going to find the best version of that idea and reflect it back to you, which feels lovely, and it's nice for the ego, but it's not actually that useful if you're trying to make a decision that matters. Because the people in your life who help you most are the ones who push back, not the ones who agree with everything you say. So one of the biggest unlocks for me has been treating Claude as a sounding board. A lot of people call it a sparring partner. I think sounding board is closer to what's actually going on, because I'm thinking out loud and getting useful pushback in return. And the way I do that is really simple. I just literally tell it. I'll say something like, "I'm thinking of doing this. Argue with me. Tell me why I'm wrong. What are my blind spots? What assumptions am I making that aren't supported by data? What would I need to find out to convince you this is actually a good idea?" And the answers I get are completely different than if I just said, "What do you think?" Because now I'm getting the version of the conversation where Claude is actually doing me a favor by stress testing the thing before I commit to it. I think the thing with Claude is you need to always remember that it's been made to a house style, a template, something that serves and supports and, in Claude's case specifically, flags, "I need to be honest," when it thinks you need a clear steer. But it isn't immediately objective or discerning of the situation in front of it. So, for example, if you go in with a business idea you think is an absolute banger, Claude will respond excitedly, without immediately questioning the commercial viability or pointing out the obvious holes in the plan. So here's an example. I'd been building this YouTube channel, and I was a few weeks in, and I started thinking, hang on, maybe I should pivot the whole thing. I'd seen what was working on my other channels, and I thought, maybe I should just rebuild this one in that direction. So I go to Claude, and I'm basically about to ask it to help me plan the pivot. And Claude kind of flags it, says, "Hey, before we go there, do you want to actually talk about this? Like, do you want to assess whether this is commercially the right call?" And that stopped me, because I'd done all this work, right? I'd theorized, I'd planned, I'd come to my own conclusions about why the channel should go in this new direction. And I hadn't considered that there was actually another tool, another entity, sitting right there, better placed than me to assess it, faster than me, has every element of the original plan loaded up already. So I went in with that. I said, okay, let's actually test this. Original direction versus pivot. Commercial viability. What's stronger? And it turned out the original was stronger. What I ended up doing was keeping the original and folding in one or two flavors from the pivot. So whenever you're making a decision that matters, don't just ask Claude to do the thing. Ask it to push back on whether you should do the thing. Tell it directly. Argue with me. Don't agree with me. Find the holes. Move 3. And this one is going to sound stupidly obvious, but I promise you, most people aren't doing it. Claude is your tutor. It's available all the time. It doesn't get impatient with you, it's not condescending, and it has access to basically the entire internet's worth of information. So whenever you have a question, before you Google it, before you go and search YouTube for a tutorial, before you ask a friend, before you wait 3 days for someone to reply in a Facebook group, just ask Claude. Here's an example. I love conspiracy theories. Always have. So when Kate Middleton went missing for months in early 2024 and the internet absolutely lost its mind, I was deep in the discourse. There was a specific tweet I wanted to understand the context of. Who posted it, what they were claiming, why it had gone viral, what the counter-arguments were. Google was useless for that. 2 reasons. 1, Google won't engage with a request like that. It'll just return SEO content about Kate Middleton in general. 2, even if it did surface anything relevant, it'd be buried under 30 news articles all saying the same thing. Claude actually engaged, pulled apart the tweet, gave me the context, explained who was making which claim, told me where the discourse had moved since, in about 90 seconds. That conversation would have been 90 minutes on Google, and I'd have learned half as much. And the move that takes this up a level is screenshots. If you've got the desktop app or you're using Claude in the browser, you can drop a screenshot straight in. So if you're following a tutorial somewhere and you're stuck, screenshot where you're stuck. Drop it in, say, I'm trying to do this, I'm at this step, what do I do next? And Claude can actually see what you're looking at and tell you exactly what to do. The biggest mindset shift here is that you don't need to find the perfect YouTube video for everything anymore. You don't need to wait for someone with the right answer. You can just go ask. And the more you do it, the more you realize how much time you used to waste looking for tutorials. So this week, just as an exercise, every time you catch yourself about to Google something or about to ask someone, ask Claude first. Just see what happens. I think you'll be surprised. Move 4, plan mode. And again, I'm going to call out that I'm not talking about Claude Code's actual plan mode feature here, because if you're not a developer, that's not on your radar yet. I'm talking about the general principle, which is that you should spend most of your time planning with Claude and a small amount of time executing. The mistake most people make when they're learning to use AI is they jump straight to the doing. Write me an email, draft me a script, make me a plan. And then they're surprised when the output is generic or off target or just a bit meh. And that's because they skipped the planning bit. What I do now for almost anything that matters is I spend a chunk of time at the start just talking to Claude about what I'm trying to do, not asking it to do anything, just thinking with it. Here's what I'm working on. Here's why. Here's what I've tried before. Here's what I'm worried about. Here's who it's for. And we just go back and forth on the framing until I'm really clear about what I actually want. And then, when I'm clear, I tell it to do the thing. And the output is 20 times better because the foundation is right. Here's an example. Whenever I'm building a new YouTube channel, and I've built a few, I spend way more time planning than producing. Like, way more. Before I open HeyGen, before I write a single script, before I render a single slide, I'll sit with Claude for hours just planning. The aesthetic, the palette, the typography, the persona who's going to host the channel, what her voice sounds like, what her sign-off is, what kind of jokes she does and doesn't make, whether she's warm or sharp or archaeological, what the visual system looks like across thumbnails and slides and shorts, and I'll let Claude push back the whole time. Is this persona too similar to my other channels? Is this palette going to read in a thumbnail at small size? Is this sign-off going to age well over 100 episodes? Does this voice actually have somewhere to go, or have I over-designed her so much there's no room for growth? By the time I actually start producing, I've got a channel Bible, 20, 30 pages sometimes, everything locked. No retreading, no second guessing, no waste. Compare that to just opening HeyGen and recording. Most people would have shipped 3 videos by the time I finished planning. But to me, mine's going to feel like a much more cohesive brand than if I just started cold. The other thing this does, which I didn't expect at first, is it makes you a sharper thinker. Because when you're forced to articulate the problem clearly enough that an AI can understand it, you understand it better yourself. Which is actually one of the unsung benefits of using AI well. You get smarter just by virtue of having to explain things to it. Move 5, memory. And the version of this for non-developers is really simple. It's just using projects properly. So Claude has this feature called projects. And if you're using the web app or the desktop app or the mobile app, you can create a project for any ongoing thing you're working on. So I have a project for each of my YouTube channels. I have one for my fiction writing. I've got one for my finance stuff. I've got one for general life admin. And what's powerful about a project is that you can load up everything Claude needs to know about that thing once. And then every conversation you have inside that project automatically has access to all of it. So for my YouTube channel projects, I've got the channel Bible loaded in, I've got the voice guidelines, I've got the visual system, I've got the list of episodes I've already published. So every time I start a new conversation about that channel, I don't have to re-explain anything. Claude already knows the brief. It already knows what we've done. It already knows the tone. And this is the biggest single source of wasted time I see with people who are new to Claude. They start a new conversation every time. They re-explain themselves every time. And then they wonder why it feels slow. It feels slow because you're feeding it the same context over and over again. So move 5 is just set up projects for the things you're going to keep working on. Load them up properly once, and then never re-explain yourself again. And there's a great little trick for keeping projects updated, which is at the end of a conversation that introduced something new, you can just say, based on what we covered today, what should I add to the project context so future conversations have this information? And Claude will literally summarize it for you and tell you exactly what to paste in. Move 6, and this is the one I'm most excited to walk through, because this is where the channel name, Renaissance, starts to actually make sense. /commands. So if you've been around Claude for a while, you might have heard the word skills, or commands thrown around. And the technical version of this is more relevant for people in Claude code. But for the rest of us, the version that matters is what I'm going to call /commands. And they are basically little reusable shortcuts you build for yourself, for things you find yourself doing over and over. The idea is this. After you've been using Claude for a while, you'll notice you keep asking it to do similar things. Maybe you keep asking it to format something a particular way. Maybe you keep asking it to check your writing against a specific style. Maybe you keep asking it to brief you on something using a particular structure. And every time, you're typing out the same instructions, more or less, which is a waste of time. The fix is you turn that repeated instruction into a /command. You give it a name that starts with a /. And then anytime you want that thing to happen, you just type the / and the name, and Claude does the thing. And the one I want to walk you through, because I think it's really useful for everyone, is my by the way command. So here's the problem this solves. You're in the middle of asking Claude to do something. Maybe it's a long task. Maybe it's writing a script. Maybe it's working through some research. And while it's mid-flow, you realize you forgot to mention something. Some piece of context, or a constraint, or a correction. And here's what most people do. They stop Claude, they type the new bit of information, and then they have to manually go, okay, now go back to what you were doing. And often Claude has lost the thread by then, or it interprets the new information as a totally new instruction, and you end up having to start half the thing again. So I use a / command called /bytheway, which stands for by the way. And what it does is, when you type /bytheway, followed by whatever you want to add, Claude understands that the new information is just additional context for the task it's already doing. It absorbs the new bit, and then it continues with what it was doing, but now with the extra context factored in. So in practice, it looks like this. I'll be asking Claude to draft a script for one of my channels, and halfway through, I'll realize I forgot to mention the runtime target. So I'll type */by the way, the runtime is 22 minutes, not 15. And Claude just keeps going, but now with the right runtime in mind. No restart, no, okay, continue with what you were doing. Just continues with the extra information. The reason this is so good is because it matches how human conversation actually works. When you're talking to a real person and you forget to mention something, you don't stop them. You don't make them restart from the beginning. You just say, oh, by the way, also *, and they fold it in. So, by the way, makes Claude work the way a human collaborator already works. Here's how you make your own. It's really simple. Step 1. Notice what you're doing repeatedly. Pay attention to the things you keep asking Claude, even if it's just a particular framing or a particular kind of edit. If you're typing it more than 3 or 4 times, it's a candidate for becoming a slash command. Step 2. Write out exactly what you want the command to do, in plain English. When I type /by the way followed by something, treat the something as additional context for the task you're already working on. Fold it in and continue without restarting. That's basically the instruction for /by the way. You can make your own commands like this for anything. Step 3. Save the instructions somewhere Claude can read it. If you're using projects, you put it in the project context. If you're using the desktop app, you can save it in a claude.md file in your working folder. If you're using the web app, you can just paste the instruction at the start of each conversation, or put it in your project. Step 4. Use it. The first few times, you might forget you have it. That's normal. But once you've used a custom / command a few times, it becomes second nature, and you start building more. So my advice with this one is start with 1. Don't try to build 20. Pick the one thing you find yourself asking Claude to do over and over, and turn that one into a command. Then, over the next month, you'll naturally notice another one, and before you know it, you've got a little toolkit of commands that's completely specific to you and your work, which is way more useful than downloading someone else's list of generic commands off the internet. Move 7, and this one's quick, but it's underrated. Use the mobile app. So whatever AI you're using, Claude, ChatGPT, whichever, they all have mobile apps now. And the mobile app syncs with your desktop, which means you can start a conversation on your laptop, leave the house, pick up the conversation on your phone, in the car, or the doctor's waiting room, or wherever you are, and it just continues. You don't lose anything. This is great for 2 reasons. The obvious one is just convenience. You can keep working in the gaps. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, adds up. But the less obvious reason is that it changes how you use Claude. When it's always there, when it's in your pocket, you stop treating it like a tool you sit down to use and start treating it like a person you can text. Hey, quick question about this. Hey, I just noticed this thing. What do you think? The more casual the relationship gets, the more you actually use it, and the more value you get out of it. So if you haven't already, download the app. Use it for the random questions. Use it on the school run. Use it when you're walking the dogs. The relationship gets better when it's constant. Move 8, the final one for the day. Put in the reps. I know that sounds like a motivational guru thing to say, but I really mean it. The single biggest difference between people who are good at AI and people who aren't is not intelligence. It's not background. It's not access to tools. It's just hours. The people who are good at this have spent hundreds of hours actually using it, not watching videos about it, not reading articles about it, actually using it. So watching this video, as much as I appreciate you being here, doesn't count. It's the equivalent of watching a workout video and expecting to get fit. You can't just consume tutorials. You have to actually do the thing. Open Claude, pick something you're actually working on, and use the moves we've just walked through. The prompt template, the sounding board, the 24/7 tutor, the planning, the projects, the / commands. Pick one and use it on something that actually matters to you. And listen, you're going to mess it up. You're going to write a bad prompt. You're going to get a generic response. You're going to lose track of what you were doing. You're going to forget you have a / command. All of that is fine. That is the work of learning something. There is no version of this where you just watch the video and you're good. You have to actually put in the reps. And the reason I'm leaning into this so hard is because I'm putting in the reps myself, in public, on this channel. The whole point of Renaissance is that I'm trying to figure this out alongside you. I'm not someone who's already arrived. I'm someone who's still figuring it out, sharing what's working and what's not as I go. So if any of this is landing, the way you get value out of these videos is not by binge watching them. It's by trying the moves and coming back when you hit something interesting. Okay, so that's the 8 moves. The prompt template, the sounding board, the 24/7 tutor, planning before you execute, projects for memory, slash commands like / by the way, the mobile app, and putting in the reps. If you can do even 3 of those consistently, you'll be using Claude better than 90% of the people out there. If you can do all 8, you're already in the territory of the people who are actually using this to change their lives. If any of what we covered today was useful, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. The description has every tool I'm currently using, and I update it as my setup changes. I'm Amy. This is Renaissance. Now go play.